Well, with me in the studio this hour, Dan Perry is International Affairs Analyst and the former Europe and Middle East editor at the Associated Press. Dan, welcome. Quite a day on this Jewish holiday, a very special holiday for Jews around the world. What are the immediate consequences of this avalanche of recognitions for a state of Palestine?
Well, on the ground, of course, nothing is going to change. So it's very easy to dismiss it as performative and just words. But it isn't quite so simple because it does risk placing Israel at loggerheads with many of the countries that are in Europe, its primary trading partner. They have a lot of leverage over Israel, and if they choose to deploy it, then it could become quite unpleasant and it could carry a certain cost. Also, I would say one of the consequences of this is attaches to the reason why many people, including myself in various appearances and articles, argued against it, which is not just that it rewards terrorism, which, it clearly does, but that the consequences of that might be to strengthen Hamas. And there is a paradox here, even an irony, which is these countries want to create a two-state solution. The one thing standing in the way of a two-state solution is Hamas. Two-state solution requires Israel to take all kinds of risks, including, at the end of the day, some manner of a pullout from much of the West Bank. West Bank is very strategic territory overlooking all of Israel's cities. Israel will not do that if Hamas is still around and armed and dangerous. So if this move by so many countries of consequence strengthens Hamas and is seen by the Palestinian body politic and by the region as validating their strategy of invading Israel and massacring over 1,000 people and starting a cataclysmic war because it ended up compelling Britain at long last, the former colonial power, to recognize Palestine. If Hamas is strengthened, the prospects of a Palestinian state are weakened.
Well, right, and you make an interesting point because all of these leaders, particularly Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Macron, they have said as part of these statements, there must be no role for Hamas. There is no place for Hamas. But if you've got a sovereign state, it's up to the people within that state to elect who leads them. Well, what would they do to stop Hamas from ruling the country?
I sort of understand Starmer because he may be cognizant of the fact that the Arab world has no democratic states. So, if Palestine were an actual democracy, but it banned parties that want to keep fighting Israel and that reject a two-state solution, it would still make it the finest democracy in the entire Arab world. The question is whether any of that is realistic. And if it turns out that 70% of the Palestinians want Hamas, as a consequence of this, could that really happen? It's complex, and I think now that the damage is done, there at least are mitigating things that should follow.
So they're looking to create an Arab dictatorship. Do you think there are domestic political considerations at play here? Macron and Starmer are two of the weakest leaders in Europe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to be cynical that way. Of course. These center-left, in Macron's case center, but really center-left, operations are, in particular in Britain, where splits are devastating because of the first past the post system, are desperate to hold on to their left flank and also to the minorities that are growing and increasingly vocal and very active. And should they abandon Macron and Starmer, especially Starmer, would constitute a real political problem for these leaders. So I have no doubt that enters the equation. I have to, honestly say, I also think that it's not completely that cynical. I think they really do want a two-state solution. I think in particular in Starmer's case, friends of Israel, I think they are aligned with the forces in Israel that believe that a two-state solution is necessary for Israel to survive as a Jewish democracy because of demographics. I think they want to nudge that solution forward, and also, honestly, I think they need Israel. I think they feel Israel needs saving from itself because of the nature of the current government. So, having despaired of any other way to end the war, they're looking to just blow up everything and do something shocking.
Right, it's a headache for those leaders, isn't it? So they are looking to do something, at least. Dan, for now, thank you very much. Let me bring in our security analyst, Yaakov Lapin.
Hamas is trying to achieve a ceasefire that it hopes would develop into a long-term truce that would enable it to rebuild its regime and its shattered terror army. That's what they're trying to do. And that's why they're demanding basically commitments by Israel to leave Gaza, to end the war, et cetera, et cetera. And if they can't get that, now they're saying, as 3 IDF divisions are closing in on Gaza City, on their last stronghold, they're saying, okay, that offer that you had 2 to 3 months ago, let's take that and see how far it goes. So I think the more the IDF is going to encroach on this stronghold, the more so-called flexibility we're going to see from Hamas, and we'll have to see, where this goes. But I would say, just based on Israel's public stance right now, this isn't going to cut it. This is not what Israel is demanding.
Yaakov, thank you. Dan?
Look, there is a narrative that says that this is Hamas's last stronghold in Gaza City, and it would be a terrible shame to cut off the assault on it and let them rebuild. But I think the truth is somewhat different. Israel has gone in and out of parts of Gaza City and in and out of parts of every part of Gaza, really, for the past 2 years. Israel's letting Hamas fighters leave along with the population to the areas of central Gaza and to other parts of Gaza, and probably they're taking the hostages with them. And the current strategy of Israel is to prolong the war without any strategy for ending it. And of course, in Israel, the cynicism is very, very great that this is being done for political reasons, and it's very ugly considering the diplomatic tsunami, as they call it, that is happening to Israel, which really does do damage. I mean, we could talk about the boycotts.
You think Israel needs to call it a day in Gaza?
I think we need a new strategy
even
whereby,
if Hamas is still in power.
Well, I was going to say before, the idea of removing Hamas from power without a military administration of Gaza for many, many years, which will be a forever war and an insurgency that will cost many, many lives, is probably not realistic. And what I'd like to see is the immediate saving of the hostages, the end of the war, and the conditioning of any reconstruction on Hamas disarming. Everything should be conditioned on Hamas disarming.
Which they have refused to do.
They have agreed to hand over the keys to Gaza. They've not agreed to disarm. And of course, but hold on.
Yeah.
If no reconstruction aid goes in, and a real attractive scenario is presented to the Palestinians of a transitional government leading to a reformed PA taking over and all the rest of it. And if in Israel's case, it's made very attractive by normalization of Saudi Arabia, maybe Syria and Lebanon. It may sound pie in the sky, but it is not. These are things that are on the table awaiting an end to the war. And if the Palestinians are confronted with two scenarios, in one, all this good things will come to them, and in the other, no reconstruction aid, and by the way, assistance in leaving Gaza, perhaps even to the West Bank.
Hamas is betting, isn't it, on the opposite happening, and on the
Hamas is betting
that
the world will not condition aid on their disarming, and I hope that bet is wrong, and this is what I want to see the UK and France and the other naive recognizers now proceed to do.
Well, Ahmed al-Sharaa is set to become the first Syrian president to address the UN General Assembly since 1967. Al-Sharaa has said that Syria and Israel are on the verge of signing a security agreement, one that could be based on the 1974 disengagement line.
So I think Israel is interested in achieving this agreement. There's a lot of pressure also from the Trump administration. But behind the scenes, Israel has got to reserve its right to act if it recognizes threats. Otherwise, we're going to be repeating some big mistakes.
All right, Yaakov, thank you. Dan, do you think Israel should be cautious here? Could this be another land for peace sort of situation with Syria?
Of course, Israel should be cautious, but Israel should also be cognizant of the opportunity here, because what's on the table is a very interesting philosophical and geopolitical question. Can a jihadist ever be redeemed? Can it be that a guy who's basically Al-Qaeda and ISIS suddenly becomes the leader of secular, a tolerant and peaceable Syria? Obviously, it's very easy to be skeptical. And of course, Israel should be maximally vigilant. But I think Israel also might want to consider that in Al-Shara's desperation to achieve international legitimacy, he may be willing to go further than, for example, his predecessors, both Assad's, were, in reaching a deal with Syria that is not just security, but maybe even diplomatic, without Israel having to give up the Golan Heights. That is the secret sauce that might be driving Israeli optimism about Syria. And towards that end, some version of normalization with Syria that doesn't require abandonment of the Golan Heights, which I don't think Israel can do, that's worth exploring. Okay. Absolutely. And by the way, though, of course, Israel needs to counter threats and be, always alert and reserve the right to go into other countries to fight those threats. This basic idea that Israel can just strike at any country in the region at will is also somewhat problematic. This is not like a long-term future that is going to be sustainable. So maybe we can hope for better things.
All right, Dan, thank you. Now, the US State Department has disputed claims that 5 people who were killed in an Israeli drone strike in Lebanon were American citizens. Israel's military said it had struck and eliminated a Hezbollah operator in the southern town of Bint Jbeil, but acknowledged that several uninvolved civilians were also killed. The IDF says the incident is under review. The Speaker of the Parliament in Lebanon, Nabi Berri, had claimed that the 4 were American citizens, but the US State Department says that while the situation is fluid, indications are that the 5 killed were not US citizens. So security analyst Yaakov Lapid, what is happening in Lebanon? We seem to have passed so many deadlines when it comes to the Lebanese army supposedly disarming Hezbollah, and Israel clearly is still having to act in the south of Lebanon.
Yeah, this is all fueled by intelligence. Israel's not waiting for Lebanon. It certainly would be glad. It's a nice to have if the Lebanese army would actually step up and start doing actual disarmament activities against Hezbollah instead of, picking up, a few trucks worth of rifles from Fatah in a sort of preordained, show, a media show. That's what's been going on so far in Lebanon. So we know that the Lebanese authorities actually do want Hezbollah disarmed, but their ability to do so is in great doubt without plunging Lebanon into civil war. And again, this is a direct lesson of October 7th. If the Lebanese state is able to step in and fill that vacuum, assert its sovereignty, I think nobody would welcome that more than Israel.
Yaakov, thank you. We were optimistic about relations with Lebanon, weren't we, following the decapitation of Hezbollah?
Absolutely, and not just that. The fall of the Assad regime ends Hezbollah's superhighway from Iran via Iraq through Syria. So there is a real opportunity here because it's not so easy for them to rearm. They also no longer fully control the port in Beirut. It would be a terrible, terrible shame to allow standard issue garden variety skepticism to prevent certain steps from being taken that might help the Lebanese disarm Hezbollah. There are 2 things here. One, I'm a little Trumpian in my idea that that money and transactionalism can resolve many things. Lebanon is in desperate economic dire straits. There is basically a huge amount of money in escrow in the Gulf waiting to go to Lebanon if they do the right thing. That needs to be made very, very clear. The world should help Lebanon force Hezbollah to disarm. And by the way, yeah, they may have to risk some version of a civil war, but better now than later when Hezbollah really does manage perhaps somehow to rearm, when maybe the current good situation in Syria changes for the worse, and again they can arm themselves through the outside borders. So maybe we strike while the iron is hot and we retain optimism, but also levers on the government of Lebanon to do what needs to happen.
So, Dan, we're coming up to the anniversary of October 7th, aren't we? Anti-Semitism is rising around the world. Diplomatic pressure is rising. What next?
I think Israel faces a choice. Last week, Netanyahu laid out a vision of Israel as being a super Sparta, isolated from the world with an autarkic economy, none of which is optimistic for the state of Israel. I would rather see Israel arising from the ashes of absolute disaster, leveraging its successes in the war, which include the schooling of Iran and the decapitation of Hezbollah, and really the massive diminishment of Hamas, to be a little bit more strategic and know how to take the win and emerge from the coming weeks and months with a massive strategic reorganization of the Middle East in Israel's favor.
It's a positive message to end on. Stay with us.